This happened a few weeks ago. My place was being renovated, so I decided to crash at my friend Alex's house. He lived in this old Victorian home. It looked charming with its tall windows and intricate details, but something felt a bit off, especially with the stormy weather outside. The rain drummed against the roof, and I thought it would help me sleep. On my first night, I woke up suddenly. It was pitch black. I heard a faint rustling sound from the attic. I wasn't sure what it was, so I got out of bed and climbed the stairs to check. When I opened the attic door, it was just old boxes. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just the house settling, but I still felt uneasy. As the rainy nights went on, things got weirder. The floors creaked under my feet in strange ways. I thought I saw shadowy figures in mirrors, but I told myself I was just imagining things. One night, I was sitting alone in the living room when I felt something cold brush against my neck. It wasn't from a draft. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. My heart raced and I felt a chill. I didn't want to freak Alex out, so I kept it to myself. We laughed and shared memories from college, but I couldn't shake that creepy feeling. Then one night, I returned to my room after watching a couple of scary movies. The air felt thick. I felt like someone was watching me, but I tried to convince myself it was just my mind. The last incident shook me to my core. I was lying wide awake, listening to the rain, when I heard a knock coming from the attic. It wasn't the sound of settling wood. It was different, deliberate. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but my legs felt like lead as I forced myself to get out of bed. I stood at the bottom of the attic stairs, staring up. I wanted to call for Alex, but stopped myself. What if I was just hearing things? I gathered my courage and decided to see what it was. I took a deep breath and climbed the stairs. My heart pounded with every creak of the wooden steps. When I reached the top, just before I could open the door, I heard a whisper. It was faint. I was sure someone was saying my name. I froze. Then I turned back, but it felt like something was right behind me. I spun around and I realized nobody was there. I ran back to my room, slamming the door behind me. I didn't sleep that night, listening to the rain and questioning if I had imagined everything. The next morning, my plan was to leave. I just wanted to be away from that house. I packed quickly and said goodbye to Alex. I didn't tell him anything. I didn't want to worry him. But a part of me knew that I would never forget those rainy nights and the terror lurking in that old Victorian house. The days passed, and I tried to push the memories of that night out of my mind. Back at my own place, I went through the motions of life. I started working again, and every time a storm rolled in, I'd catch myself glancing at the windows. I couldn't shake the fear of what I'd felt in that house. One afternoon, I got a text from Alex. He was in town and wanted to meet up. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to see him, but another part was screaming to avoid any mention of that cursed attic. Still, I decided to meet him. After all, he was my friend. We met at a small cafe downtown. The air was warm and the sun was shining. It felt good to be with him in a normal setting. We chatted about old times, laughter easing the tension. But I could tell Alex was different. He seemed distracted, glancing around like he was waiting for someone. After a while, I couldn't hold back any longer. "How's the house?" I blurted out, immediately regretting it. His expression changed. "It's fine, I guess," he said, but the annoyance bubbled under the surface. I could tell he was trying to brush it off. "Any creepy noises?" I pressed. He sighed. "Maybe a few. Old houses make sounds, you know, but I haven't had any weird experiences." The way he avoided eye contact made my gut twist. I wanted to believe him, but I knew what I had heard. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, after our meeting, I lay in bed with my mind racing. I was just starting to drift off when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex. "Can you come over? I need to show you something." I felt a jolt of anxiety. What could be so important?
But curiosity got the better of me. I shot him a quick reply, on my way, and grabbed my keys. The drive felt longer than usual. The streets were eerily quiet, and storm clouds loomed overhead. When I arrived at Alex's house, the lights were dim, casting long shadows across the porch. I approached cautiously, an uneasy feeling creeping back. Inside, Alex was waiting in the living room, his face pale. "I'm glad you came," he said, looking nervous. "I found something in the attic." The mention of the attic made my heart race. I didn't want to go back. I had to push through the fear. "What did you find?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He grabbed a flashlight and nodded toward the stairs. He was serious. Somehow, I felt it was important. I followed him upstairs, convinced I needed answers, but dread washed over me with each step. When we entered the attic, my pulse quickened. Alex aimed the flashlight at a
Dusty old trunk in the corner. "I opened it," he admitted, shivering slightly. "There are some old things in here, and something else." As he knelt down to unfasten the latches, a sudden clap of thunder shook the house. I felt the air get colder. Then everything went dark. In the pitch black, I held my breath, realizing I wasn't alone. I could hear breathing, slow and deep, coming from behind us. My chest tightened, panic creeping in. The flashlight flickered back to life, and we turned around. That's when I saw it. I froze. The beam of the flashlight illuminated a figure, suspended in the shadows at the far end of the attic. It was hunched over, shrouded in darkness, but I could make out a gaunt face and wide eyes staring back at me. Fear cascaded through my body like ice water. "Alex?" I whispered, my voice trembling. But he was too shocked to respond. He simply stared at the figure, mouth agape. The presence shifted, its outline growing clearer as the flashlight flickered. I could see long, stringy hair hanging over his face. The silence stretched, thick with tension. I reached for Alex, gripping his arm tightly. It felt like the air had thickened, making it hard to breathe. "What is that?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, but the chill creeping down my spine was all too real. The figure didn't reply. It tilted its head like it was trying to understand us, a pained expression crossing its features. "Get it out!" Alex finally shouted, breaking the tension. He lunged for the stairs, but I didn't move. Something held me captive. I wanted to run too, but a part of me was drawn to the figure. There was a sadness in its eyes, something that made me hesitate. In an instant, the figure vanished. 1 second it was there, and the next it melted into the shadows. The coldness in the air transformed into a suffocating heat. The flashlight flickered again, and suddenly it was too quiet. "What the hell just happened?" I asked, my voice shaking. Alex was still pale, but now he looked frightened and ashamed. I don't know," he stammered. "I thought I was losing it. I've been hearing things in the house, but I didn't. Did you see its face?" I interrupted, shivers coursing through me. "What was that?" I think it was a woman," he replied slowly. "I found some old photographs in that trunk. Maybe she lived here, or something worse." I turned to the trunk, breathless. What else was in there? The memory of my own fear threatened to engulf me again. I couldn't go back to that dread, but I needed to know. Alex tentatively opened the trunk fully now, revealing crumpled letters and faded pictures. "These letters are dated from the 40s, he said, picking one up. "It looks like she
was writing to someone named Thomas." I felt a prickling sense of familiarity wash over me. "Do you have them?" My heart raced. Maybe these letters held the key to why the woman was still lingering in the attic. "We have to keep looking," Alex insisted, his fear escalating into determination. She must be trying to tell us something. Suddenly, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows. I heard the unmistakable creak of steps from below. Someone, or something, was in the house. "Alex," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm, "we need to go now." But before I could react, the attic door swung open, and I gasped at the silhouette standing in the doorway. I couldn't see who it was, but I felt dread settle in my gut. "Who's there?" I called out, panic rising. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face I didn't recognize, eyes glimmering in the dark. "Help me." With that simple plea, my heart raced anew. I couldn't ignore this. Whatever was happening, it was far from over. I couldn't breathe. The request hung thick in the air, bringing back memories I never wanted to acknowledge. My chest tightened as I took a step back. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure hesitated. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a murmur, "you have to help me." At that moment, the flashlight flickered again, and I caught a clearer glimpse of her face. It was the same gaunt face I had seen before, the woman from the shadows. Her eyes were filled with a mix of fear and desperation, stirring something inside me that I couldn't quite place. Alex took a cautious step forward. "What do you need help with?" His voice was steadier than mine, but I could hear the nerves cracking through. "I'm trapped," she said, her gaze darting to the corners of the attic as if expecting something sinister to emerge from the dark. "You must find him. Find Thomas." "Who is Thomas?" I asked, my heart racing. It felt unreal, like I'd slipped into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. "He's the only one who can set me free," she replied, her voice desperate. "But he's gone. You need to uncover the truth." The shadows shifted around her, as if the very space was alive, closing in on her. "Wait," I interrupted. "What truth? Where do we begin?" Before she could answer, the attic door slammed shut behind Alex with a loud thud, sending a shiver down my spine. Panic erupted within me. "I can't stay here," I cried, instinctively grabbing for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. "Let us out." The woman's expression changed. "It's not me," she said, her voice suddenly cold. "You mustn't anger him. He won't let you leave." "What do you mean?" I asked, desperation clawing at my throat. The room began to grow darker, shadows lengthening and wrapping around her figure. "He's here," she whispered, her voice fading. "You have to." Then she vanished, leaving the attic empty and silent, a suffocating darkness wrapping around us. "Alex!" I screamed, whirling towards him. We had to find a way out. Fear surged through me as I pounded on the door. "We're trapped." His face was pale. "What just happened? Where did she go?" "I don't know," I yelled, trying to remain calm but failing. "We need to find a way out, or—" Then, without warning, the air turned frigid again. I caught sight of a second shadow forming in the corner, a presence building. "Run!" Alex shouted. We rushed toward the window, but it was sealed shut. I turned to see the figure growing clear, a man with hollow cheeks and dark, hollow eyes. He stared directly at us, a cold smile forming on his lips. "Help me," he echoed, his voice deep and menacing, mimicking the woman's plea, only this time it felt like a threat. With no way to escape and the shadows closing in, I knew we had to confront whatever this was. My heart raced as I glanced at Alex. "We need to find Thomas," I whispered, feeling the urgency seep into my bones. But before I could say another word, the room plunged into darkness. Everything went quiet, and I realized we were not alone. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the darkness engulfing us. My mind raced. I reached for Alex, my fingers brushing against his arm. "Are you okay?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I can't see anything," he replied, his voice strained. I felt the frantic beat of his heart thumping through the air, matching my own. "What just happened? Where are we?" The chilly air settled over us like a heavy fog. I strained to listen. The creaking of old wood seemed louder, amplified in the silence. "I don't know, but we need to keep moving," I said, fighting the growing urge to panic. Suddenly, a flicker of light broke through the darkness, illuminating the corner of the attic. I could barely make out a shape, a bookcase. I squinted and stepped toward it, feeling the wood beneath my fingertips. "Look," I said, a hint of hope creeping into my voice. "Maybe there's something behind it. We can—" Before I could finish, the light flickered again, and the shadowy figure of the man appeared right in front of us. His smile widened, teeth sharp and gleaming. My breath hitched in my throat. "Did you come to help?" he asked, his voice dripping with mockery. "Go away!" Alex shouted, stepping in front of me. The figure's smile faded. "I can help you find Thomas," he said, almost serenely. "But first, you must understand why I'm here." "What do you mean?" I croaked, fear coursing through me. His eyes glinted as he leaned closer. "There was a time when I was lost too. But only by accepting what's come before can you move forward." "What does that even mean?" I bit back, anger mixing. As if mocking my frustration, the man began to dissolve into the shadows, his laughter echoing around us. "Look for the truth. It's buried deep." With that, the light vanished, plunging us into darkness once more. "Alex!" I gasped, furier than before. I grabbed his arm, panic bubbling up. "What does he know about Thomas?" "Let's find a way out first," he urged, his voice sharp with urgency. "We need to search the attic." Feeling along the wall, I spotted a gap behind the bookcase. There might be something back here. My heart raced as we pushed the old wooden structure aside. It creaked in protest, but finally gave way, revealing a small, dark space behind it. "What if that's where they kept him?" Alex whispered. I glanced at him, uncertainty clear in my eyes, but the urgency settled into resolve. "There's only one way to find out," I replied, battling the dread gripping my insides. I could feel the air grow heavier around us, the shadows shifting as if waiting for our next move. Taking a deep breath, I crouched down into the dark space. "Stay close," I called back. The sound of Alex following behind me echoed through the attic. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed something on the ground. An old journal, its leather cover cracked and worn. I reached out, fingers trembling. "Alex, I think I found something," I said, a mix of dread and anticipation coursing through me. But before I could open it, the attic door slammed shut, shaking the floor beneath us. "Quick!" I shouted, grabbing the journal as fear clawed at my throat. "We have to keep moving." In the distance, I heard the low growl of laughter again, merging with the heartbeat of darkness surrounding us. As we crouched in the cramped darkness, I clutched the journal tightly against my chest. My fingers trembled at the thought of what might be inside. But the eerie laughter echoed around us, chilling me to the bone. "We need to find a way out," I whispered urgently. Alex nodded, his eyes wide with anxiety. "Can you see anything? Is there a door or a window?" I squinted into the gloom, trying to make sense of our surroundings. The shadows felt alive, writhing and shifting, as if anticipating our next move. "It's too dark to see anything clearly. Let's just feel around." We began to crawl deeper into the small space, shuffling sideways. I could hear a low thrum of energy around us, a tension that made my skin crawl. I tried to focus on the journal, hoping it held answers. But the moment I thought of opening it, a noise interrupted my thoughts. A faint scraping echoed through the attic, and my heart raced. "Did you hear that?" "What was it?" Alex whispered back, fear lacing his voice. Before I could reply, the wall next to us creaked ominously. I froze, my body preparing for a confrontation I didn't quite understand. "Stay quiet," I urged, my throat dry. We listened, the sounds of the attic creaking under pressure. I felt a draft, cool and strange, creeping along my neck. That's when I saw it, a glimmer of light cutting through the darkness on the far side of the attic. "Look," I whispered, pointing. "There's something over there." "We should check it out," Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. "But be careful." We crawled toward the light, which flickered like a candle, casting strange shadows that danced across the walls. As we approached, I realized it was coming from a cracked window, partly open and letting in the cool night air. "Okay, we're almost there," I said, my hope blossoming. But the moment we reached the window, my heart dropped. In the light, I saw more than just the view outside. A wooden board had been propped up against the window frame, with several names crudely carved into it. Thomas was one of them. "What is this?" I breathed, my pulse pounding in my ears. I reached out, tracing my fingers over the names. Each carve felt like a warning. Then, from behind us, that same laughter rang out again, louder this time. I turned, and there he was, the man in the shadows, his smile returning, wide and unsettling. "You've found the truth," he said, his voice smooth like silk, but heavy with malice. "No, stay away from us!" Alex shouted, pushing me behind him, his fear turning into defiance. "Ah, but don't you see?" The man stepped closer, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "The truth always finds a way to surface." As he spoke, the air tightened around us, and the journal slipped from my grasp, landing open on the floor. The pages fluttered wildly before stalling on a drawing, a sketch of a young boy, eyes filled with dread. "Thomas," I whispered, recognizing the face. Just then, the atmosphere shifted, darkening, as if the shadows themselves were reaching for us. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Alex's arm. We bolted back into the attic, desperate to escape the suffocating presence closing in on us. With every step, I could feel the shadows grasping at my ankles, trying to pull me back to whatever fate awaited. "It won't let us leave," I gasped, panicking. Then, everything went dark again. No laughter, no more light. Just the overwhelming weight of fear pressing down, and the suffocating sound of silence wrapping itself around me. I couldn't see anything. My hands felt the rough floor beneath me as I struggled to keep my composure. I didn't know how long we'd been running, but it felt like forever. "Alex, where are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. "I'm here," he replied, relief evident in his tone. "Just keep moving." My heart raced as I stumbled through the darkness. There was something unsettling about the silence that enveloped us now. No laughter, no creaking, just our hurried breaths and the palpable tension in the air. "Do you think he's still following us?" Alex whispered, concern etched on his face. "I don't know, but we need to find a way out," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I could finally see the outline of a staircase leading down. The faintest sliver of light flickered from below, which gave me a glimmer of hope. "Let's go," I urged, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the stairs. We descended cautiously, each step creaking ominously under our weight. As we reached the bottom, a chill swept through the hallway. I glanced over at the journal, the pages now closed but still ominous. "Do you think we should take it with us?" I asked, glancing back toward the staircase. "No time for that," Alex replied, his eyes darting nervously. "We have to get out of this place." The dim light from a single bulb illuminated the hallway, revealing old photographs hanging on the walls. Each portrait stared down at us, their expressions frozen in time, but there was something uncanny about them. They felt almost alive. I shivered, unable to shake the eerie sensation creeping down my spine. "These people, they look familiar," I muttered, squinting to get a better look. That's when something caught my attention, a name written in flowing script at the bottom of one of the photos. Thomas, I breathed. What? Who's Thomas? Alex asked, stepping closer to see. He's in the journal, but I don't understand, I murmured, my mind racing. Suddenly, the light flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls again. And that's when I heard it, a soft whimpering sound, faint but clear, coming from the end of the hallway. Did you hear that? I asked, my voice trembling. Yeah, Alex's eyes widened with caution. We should... Before he could finish, the sound escalated into a deafening scream. I jumped back, my body stiff with fear. What was that? I gasped, glancing at Alex, whose face was pale. Maybe we should just go back, he shouted, panic rising. Are you crazy? We can't go back, I insisted. I forced myself to take a step forward, my curiosity battling my fear. As we approached the source of the sound, my breath hitched. Through a crack in a door at the end, I caught a glimpse of something moving unnaturally. It looked like shadows twisting and swirling about in a chaotic dance. I reached for the doorknob, hesitating just as my fingers made contact. What if it's dangerous? Alex's voice trembled, grabbing my arm to stop me. No, we have to see what's going on, I insisted. I flung the door open, but what greeted us made my stomach drop. A room filled with ancient toys, clocks ticking eerily, and in the center, a small figure hunched over, rocking back and forth. Thomas? I breathed, the name slipping from my lips like a prayer. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face that was both familiar and foreign. Fear paralyzed me as the boy's eyes met mine, and suddenly silence crashed down, freezing the moment in time. I felt dread wash over me as I understood something more terrible than I could have imagined. He wasn't alone. The shadows coiled tighter around us, and from behind the boy, countless eyes began to open, watching us closely. I backed away instinctively, realization dawning. The truth I had stumbled into was far darker than I could comprehend. There was no escaping it now. I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. Alex tugged on my arm, urgency in his grip. We need to get out of here, now, he urged, his voice barely above a whisper. But I couldn't take my eyes off Thomas. His expression was frozen between sadness and fear, a reflection of the shadows that twisted behind him. I felt torn between the urge to flee and the need to find out what was happening. Thomas, are you okay? I asked, stepping closer, driven by a strange instinct. My voice almost cracked under the weight of my fear. The boy shook his head, his eyes darting toward the shadows, which seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like dark tides. They won't let you go, he whispered, his voice faint, choked with a kind of foreboding. What do you mean? I could hardly breathe as the shadows flickered, shifting closer. Leave, please, he pleaded, voice rising. They want you. I turned to Alex, who was pale and trembling. We can't just leave him here, I argued, panic creeping into my voice. Are you kidding? That's a ghost or something. We need to run. Alex's eyes were wide with fear, and I could see he was seconds away from bolting. But before I could reply, the shadows warped and surged. One shadow stretched out a long, thin arm, reaching toward us. I gasped and yanked Alex away just as it brushed against the floor where we had stood. Go, I shouted. I could feel the weight of the shadows growing heavier, wrapping around my legs. I sprinted toward the door, dragging Alex with me. As we barreled out of the room and back into the hallway, the screams echoed around us. They were desperate, filled with anguish, clawing at my mind. The light above us flickered violently, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Which way? Alex yelled. Where do we go? The way we came, I suggested, but something told me that wouldn't be safe anymore. I could feel an overwhelming pressure building behind us, something hungry. No, I blurted out, realizing that running back wouldn't help. We need to find another way, forward.
We darted further down the hallway, pushing past the portraits, their eyes now shifting, following us. They felt like predators, waiting for the moment to strike. Then a heavy thud reverberated through the air, shaking the walls. The ground almost shifted beneath our feet. I looked over my shoulder. The door was now ajar, shadows spilling into the hallway, like an inky fog. "Come on!" I screamed, pulling Alex with me as we veered left into a narrow corridor. The air turned colder, the atmosphere thick with dread. We found ourselves in what looked like a small storage room filled with old furniture and forgotten relics. There was a single dusty window, but it barely let in any light. A sense of suffocation enveloped us. As I turned to look for an exit, I noticed a glimmer peeking from beneath the floorboards. "What's that?" I whispered, kneeling down. "That better not be another ghost," Alex muttered, eyeing the sudden darkness forming just beyond the door. I pulled the plank back, revealing a small, ornate box. My heart skipped. Was it something that could help us? But when I opened it, my heart raced even faster. Inside was a collection of photographs, faces staring back at me, and among them was the same boy, Thomas. I felt a chill down my spine as the realization hit. Each face belonged to someone who had gone missing from this house. Who are these people? Alex was now watching the box over my shoulder, terror etching itself in every line of his face. "That's Thomas, and the rest?" I began, but I was interrupted by the door slamming shut with a deafening bang. Something was coming. I felt it in my bones. "We need to find out quickly," I said, panic driving my voice. But before I could move, shadowy tendrils slithered through the crack beneath the door. We were running out of time. I felt a surge of adrenaline. The shadows crept closer, their form morphing, twisting around the edges of the room like a living nightmare. I glanced at Alex, his face pale and wide-eyed, mirroring my own panic. "Do you see that?" I hissed, pointing at the writhing darkness. "We need to do something." "Like what?" he shot back, breathless. I could tell he was barely holding it together. I spotted an old bookshelf against the wall, its shelves sagging under the weight of dust-covered books. "Help me with that!" I shouted, rushing toward it. If we could block the door, maybe we could buy ourselves some time. Together, we shoved the bookshelf against the door, the wood scraping painfully against the floor. But it was no use. The shadows began to pulse with a greater intensity, as if sensing our fear. The tugging at my legs grew sharper, and I stumbled backward, pinning myself against the box with the photographs. "Why won't they leave us alone?" Alex yelled, panic rising in his voice. "I don't know, but look," I pointed to the box again. "Maybe there's something here that can help." I rifled through the photos, desperation coursing through me. Most of the faces were unfamiliar. My hands trembled as I flipped through, but then there was one picture that caught my breath. A girl with dark hair and bright eyes, a smile that felt eerily familiar. "Wait," I murmured, squinting at her face. "I know her." "What?" Alex's voice was shaky as he leaned closer. "Who is it?" "It's my cousin. She disappeared a few years ago. I thought—" I couldn't finish the thought. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, mixing with my fear. Before I could piece together why her photo was here, the bookshelf shuddered. The shadowy tendrils pushed against it, testing its resistance. I stared at the dark mass, desperate for answers. "Let's get out of here!" Alex shouted again, his eyes darting around. "Try the window!" The window. I rushed over, throwing it open. But the drop was high, and the rain poured down, drenching everything in darkness. I hesitated for a moment, my heart racing. "We can't just jump!" "We have to," he insisted. "We can't stay here." But just as we were about to decide, the door started to bend. The bookshelf groaned and shifted. I could see the shadows merging, twisting into something much larger, more menacing. "Go!" I yelled, grabbing Alex's arm and shoving him toward the window. "Now!" Suddenly, a deep, guttural whisper echoed within the room. "Stay with us." It sent chills down my spine. I hurriedly climbed onto the low ledge, pulling Alex up with me, just as the door finally blasted open. The shadows surged. I could see vague shapes forming, faces twisted in agony. "Jump!" I didn't wait for a response. I leapt out into the rain, dragging Alex with me. The world spun as we fell, then crashed into a muddy patch below. I gasped for breath, drenched and terrified. But even as I tried to get my bearings, I could feel the whispers trail behind us, calling softly. "Who were those people?" asked, wide-eyed as we scrambled to our feet. "I don't know," I panted, glancing back at the house. Shadows still swarmed in the window, reaching out as if they could follow us. "But we need to get away from here, now." As we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that our escape had only just begun. I never looked back as we sprinted down the street, heart pounding in rhythm with the thunder clapping above us. The rain lashed against my skin, a stark reminder of the horrors we had just escaped. Alex dashed beside me, still in shock, his eyes darting around as if the shadows from the attic might leap out at any moment. Finally, after a desperate sprint that felt like a lifetime, we reached my car. I fumbled for my keys, cursing the way my hands trembled. "Get in!" I shouted, shoving the door open and jumping into the driver's seat. Alex hopped in beside me, his breaths heavy with panic. The engine roared to life, and I hit the gas, peeling out onto the wet road. The tires squealed in the downpour as I pressed harder, desperate to put distance between us and Alex's Victorian nightmare. The rain poured like an unending curtain, obscuring the rearview mirror. But I could feel the weight of the shadows stalking us even from afar. "What the hell just happened?" Alex blurted out, disbelief clear in his voice. I shifted gears, but couldn't find the words to explain the sensations, the suffocating dread, or the strange connection to Thomas. All of it felt like quicksand, deep, dark, and inescapable. "I don't know," I whispered, my voice barely rising above the patter of rain against the windshield. "But those photos—" "Yes, and that boy," Alex continued, his expression shifting from shock to frustration. "What if those people, they took Thomas?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I just know we have to get far away from that house." The remnants of the storm felt lighter now, but my gut churned with the thought that our flight had only shifted the danger. "Do you think the woman, the man, whoever they were, are still in that attic?" he asked, his voice shaky. I clenched the wheel tighter. I wish I knew. But what if they weren't just spirits? What if they were something more? We drove in silence, and I could only think about the implications of what we'd encountered. A house with missing people's names carved into the walls, a boy trapped in shadows, and the whispers that still lingered in my mind. Once we reached my apartment, I parked but didn't turn off the engine. I felt safer with the engine running, a reassurance against whatever horror lingered in the dark corners of that house. "We shouldn't handle this alone," Alex said finally. "We need to tell someone." "Who?" I said, my voice cracking. "The police? They won't believe us. They'll think we're crazy." "Maybe not," he snapped back, urgency snarled into his tone. "If we tell them about the disappearances—" But suddenly, an icy gust seemed to sweep inside the car, seeping through the cracks. An anxious weight pressed on my chest as I glanced at the rearview mirror. The shadows didn't just belong to the attic. They were here. They were always with us. "Maybe we just move on, Alex," I suggested, not because I believed it, but because I needed to believe it. "We can forget." "Forget? You think they'll just leave us alone?" he replied, eyes widening. "That's not how this works." I sulked back in my seat, the rain still hammering outside. The unease gnawed at me. What if we find out the truth? What if it's worse than the knowledge itself? I glanced at him, and I realized that we'd both seen too much. The whispered pleas, the darkness. It had planted a seed of doubt that hung in the air like the storm above us. We fell silent, the weight of our unspoken fears stretching between us like an invisible chain. Suddenly, a soft beep jolted us back to the moment as my phone lit up on the dash. A notification, a message from Alex's mom. "Are you okay? I heard something strange about the old Victorian."
House? Alex's eyes went wide. She heard something? From who? My heart began to race again. Maybe someone else knows, he urged, his voice edged with excitement and fear. She might have heard about the disappearances, could have spoken to someone. We need to find out. But as he spoke, I felt a familiar chill race through me. The shadows were not just out there, they were in me, echoing the promises that I'd made, of secrets untold and a fate that might already be sealed. The rain mingled with bitter realization. Though we had escaped the Victorian house, we still hadn't escaped its grasp. I turned the ignition off, the silence enveloping us. Despite our fear, there was a flicker of determination growing within. "We need to uncover the truth," I finally said, feeling the gravity of those words. For better or worse, it seemed our journey was far from over. As we gathered our things to head back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had begun in that house was far from finished. I would need to confront the memories, the echoes, both dark and light, if I were to ever really escape them. Sometimes I wonder if the whispers from that storm-soaked attic still linger in the corners of my mind. But more than that, I wonder if I truly have the strength to face whatever truths they may hold.